Yesterday, we spoke to Zahir Ahmed, the grieving uncle of 5-year-old Yusuf Nazir, who died after his family say he did not get the urgent medical help he needed.
Yusuf had already spent a night waiting in A&E and was sent home with antibiotics. But as his condition got worse, his family pleaded for him to be admitted to a ward, believing he wouldn't get the help he needed in casualty.
So I rang them and I begged them. I've never begged for anything in my life, and I begged them to help him. I said, he needs treatment, he needs this IV antibiotic, he needs help. Can you please help him? Can you please give him this antibiotic? She said, no, we've not got the space, we've not got the doctors, what do you want me to do?
Eventually, Yusuf was taken to a different hospital, but it was too late. And he died. And his heartbreaking story provoked an overwhelming response from you.
Now, with news today of a forthcoming strike by ambulance workers, Britain's top A&E doctor is warning the emergency care system is in crisis. Dr. Adrian Boyle, president of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, joins us now. Good morning, Adrian. Should we be worried? And how worried should we be?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear that.
So I was asking, clearly the situation in the NHS is not good right now, and we're now hearing of ambulance strikes from ambulance workers. Can we have faith in the system? Can we have faith that if we get ill, we will be served properly after what we're hearing?
So, too many people are waiting too long, and long waits are dangerous for people. People should not be deterred from seeking help if they need it. It's important to recognise that if people are ill, they need to try and seek help. We are very concerned about the long waits that people are undergoing. We know that these long waits are dangerous, and that heartbreaking story we've just heard is yet another example of people just waiting too long. We urgently need to increase the capacity within our hospitals and look after our workforce so that they can then look after us.
But everybody understands we urgently need to increase the capacity. But is that something that's possible? If you were the Secretary of State for Health, what would you do?
So I think we need to look back. We've been here before. I was a junior doctor in the 1990s, and we had these similar sorts of stories going on all the time. We had these very long waits. Things are slightly different now, but the principles are there, and we were able to turn it around. It took a lot of political will and investment, but this is fixable, but it does require a lot of effort, a lot of political will, and a lot of investment to make this work.
Dr. Boyle, as a parent, listening to the experience of Yusuf's family, I have to admit, I would be frightened if I took one of my children to A&E right now, and I think a lot of people will feel the same way. And that is not to denigrate the efforts of our hard-working, under-pressure A&E staff. But doctors warn 4,000 patients a day spend more than 12 hours in A&E, and analysis suggests struggles to access emergency care may now be responsible for around 2,000 deaths a month. A&E doesn't sound like a safe place to be or somewhere where you're going to get the treatment you need. Can you reassure patients and parents?
I wish I could. I think the situation is very challenging at the moment, and there are places that are really struggling. So I don't think it's a binary question of yes, I can reassure you, no, I can't. People, when they go to emergency departments, we will do our best to look after them. We have systems to try and identify people, but we've got to look at this whole problem with emergency care as part of a system. This is not because there aren't enough doctors in emergency departments and not enough staff. It's actually because the whole system isn't working. We're not able to admit patients into the hospital. And actually, if we really want to try and improve things, we've got to start at the back door, and we need to make sure that we have enough beds and we're using the beds properly. And we need to reform that difficult interface between hospitals and social care so we can use our beds properly.
But it's rather worrying to hear you say that you can't give those guarantees. But of course, let's make this very practical for a second for everybody who is listening. And I will phrase it deliberately. As a balance of risk If you have an emergency or an accident and are feeling severely unwell and your GP is not available and it's not appropriate for your GP, you are still better to go to A&E than not to go to A&E on a balance of risk, I presume.
Absolutely. It is really important that if people think they are unwell, that they seek help. And I'm very anxious that the anxiety around all these stories that are here now will discourage people from seeking help when they need it. If you are ill and you think you need help, you should seek help.
Look, you know, that's exactly what Yusuf's family tried to do. I'm sure you will acknowledge, you know, there's an investigation going on into that case, but his uncle told us yesterday that when a patient in the same waiting room with a different complaint, but who was sitting next to Yusuf, went up to the front desk, the answers that they got were, we've got children waiting, we've got people waiting, we've only got one doctor that's looking after all the children, and after 12 at midnight, he looks after all the adults. We've got no doctors available, we do what we can, but you'll be waiting a long time. This is a little boy who is already struggling to breathe. And I just don't know what we can do to reassure people when we tell them it's a systemic problem that needs solving across the NHS. I feel at a loss to know how to help people, and I'm sure you do as well. And now we've got the ambulance strike. I mean, you know, what do we do, Dr. Boyle?
It is undoubtedly going to be very challenging. I think, first of all, the public can help. There are important things where if you are eligible for your vaccinations, get vaccinated, particularly against flu and COVID. It's quite important that people access care responsibly. If they think something can wait until the next day, that's quite helpful if they contact their GP in hours. Use NHS 111. But be prepared if you are going to an emergency department and you think you might be ending up being admitted to hospital, be prepared for quite a long stay. The attitude I see from the public when they're very accepting and they're very stoic, and we need to recognise that, but we will try everything we can to keep people safe.
Dr. Boyle, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Adrian Boyle, A&E Consultant, President of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine.
As journalists, when you're doing a story like this, there's a balance of responsibilities. And it's important for you as viewers to understand that. It is our job and our responsibility to expose the problems that are going on and where there may well be systemic failings. But you also have to balance that story against the own individual decision that you make. And the message that you need to hear from that, as though it is worrying, and it is worrying for the systemic problem in the NHS, is that if you are ill and you need help, then go and get help. Do not let that story, even though there are individual cases where the system does not work, do not let that put you off getting help. Speak to your GP, speak to a pharmacist, call the NHS hotline, and if you are unsure, go to A&E.
You've been getting in touch with us this morning with your comments about the way that you feel you've been failed by A&E. Look, my heart goes out to you all. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. And it also goes out to those who are working at the front line of emergency medicine. You know, it's an enormously tough time right now. Thank you for the work that you do. Let's hope that the Health Secretary is listening.